Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Courtney Bach-Hankin. I'm the Director of People and Culture here at Snappy for the US team. While we give everyone just another moment to join, I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing today, which to me is really exciting. We're giving us HR professionals some time that we rarely get, me time. Time for us to commiserate with each other, to be validated by each other, and maybe even have a few laughs about some of the craziness we endure in our role. Today, I'll be talking with Suzanne Lucas, otherwise known as the evil HR lady. Suzanne, welcome.
Thank you so much, Courtney. I'm super excited to be here and to talk about the human side of HR. I've spent a really long time in HR since the 1900s. Okay, so I started HR in 1999, but it was the 1900s.
Oh,
And
1900, yes.
yes, it's been a long time, but it's been a great journey.
And we are so excited to talk about that journey today. While
Absolutely.
I am having a conversation with you, Suzanne, today, what I really want to encourage all of us who have joined today is to have an open exchange with each other. Please don't be shy. Like I said, we're here to validate each other and have a healthy dialogue. So we really encourage everyone to open up in the chat and share with each other. Tell us what's on your mind. Tell us what you're thinking about, what we're talking about, share advice with each other. We will have a Q&A at the end, so feel free to drop your questions as we go along, or when we get to that part of the conversation, send them our way. So to get us started, let's open up with a fun one. And I already see the chat is lighting up with some really, really great responses here. But what was your first, funniest, most unexpected, or most informative job? And while the chat continues to light up, Suzanne, can you get us started? Tell us about your first HR role.
Well, my first HR role, I have a master's degree in political science. Um, I was in a PhD program and I realized I hated it. So I dropped out and I needed a job. And what does one do with a master's degree in political science? Not much, right? So I needed a job and I thought about what I really wanted to do. And I realized the reason why I had gone into the PhD program was I wanted to teach, but I wanted to teach adults. Don't put me in a class with kindergartners. That is not going to go over well. Um, and I thought, okay, well, how can I get a job as a trainer? Oh, that's an HR job, I decided, which maybe. But that's what I decided. And so I went to a temp agency and said, hey, I would like to work, I'll do anything in an HR department. And I could type 110 words a minute back then. So they were like, absolutely. And they placed me as an administrative assistant in a compensation department in a tiny pharmaceutical company. And I knew less than nothing. But my boss was so overwhelmed that she gave me stuff to do. I am fresh into HR, no HR knowledge, nothing, right? I am there because I can type 110 words a minute. And she gives me a compensation survey to fill out. And I was like, can you fill this out? Like putting in, and I'm like, okay. And I had to go to her, and I remember saying to her, what does exempt mean? Because that's not a term. I mean, I had worked my way through school at Burger King and Kmart and as a teaching assistant in the political science department, right? I didn't know what exempt was. I didn't know what non-exempt was, but I'm so grateful for that experience, and I worry about the data that I contributed. That people were paying for this data analysis that was done by this literal clueless person.
Yeah. And I think probably something already that a lot of our participants are relating to, which is that feeling of overwhelm and just, can somebody do this? And so you stepped in and you were like, yeah, I got this. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
What
and
comes
it
to
was
mind?
such a great experience for me. I mean, I learned so much. I do feel bad about the data. I did my best, but I'm sure I did it wrong. But that's how I started. How did you start? What was your first HR job?
The first thing that comes to mind for me, it wasn't exactly my first. It was close though. I had bopped around to a few different places for college and, following my sweetheart, now husband, to a few different places and decided to come back to my hometown in Eastern Pennsylvania, which is near the coal regions, near the steel belt. So a very blue collar area. And here I was, fresh out of college and got a job as an HR, health, environmental, and safety specialist straight out of college, in a gray iron casting foundry. And so, if you're not familiar, it's lots of silica sand, dust, literally open pits of molten metal and mostly staffed by middle-aged to older men who had been crafting this skill for a while because it was a skill and they were creating, in this case, in this foundry, they were making like the storm grates and the street grates that you see on the streets. And so here I came in with my shiny new steel tip boots and my eager attitude, and I'm reminding these men to put on your PPE and make sure you take your break on time.
Which went
They
over well, I'm sure.
they were amused to say the least, but it was a very informative role, and I'm very grateful for it.
I was just looking through, we asked the question, what was your very first job, not your first HR job, but these are fantastic.
Aren't
Roller
they?
skate, car hop, pizza shop, babysitter. Oh gosh, I used to babysit, but I confess to the
Don't tell them you didn't like kids.
I love my children are awesome, especially my children are adults now, but no babysitting. I They always came home to kids alive and the house clean, so frankly I deserved a raise. Um, Data entry officer, dining hall of the college I attended, waitress at Captain Bob Horner's, a seafood restaurant. I sucked at it, says Leah. Oh, here's a terrible one. Celebrating child's birthdays at McDonald's. God
Wow.
bless you.
Yes. Very
I
specific.
love these so much.
Yeah.
So much.
And I see there's some echoing on your end. I'm not sure what we can do to address that, but I'll give you a moment. While I transition this a little bit, I do see a lot of like servers, waiter, waitress, and I feel like that's a job that really prepares you for the stress of this role in particular, being able to handle so many things at once. But I'm curious, looking back on your HR profession and all of the different industries that you've supported, the different structures you've supported, what's one workplace truth that you've actually come to believe more strongly over time?
So, when I started in HR, I was very idealistic. I think a lot of us are. Like, I can make a difference, right? And I'm here because I'm going to support people. I was very, very idealistic. And then you kind of get shot down. And I remember uh, my first real job that was a salaried exempt role, which I knew what it meant by then,
Right. Now you
um,
know.
was at Wegmans, which is a grocery store chain, and I was corporate data analyst for HR data analyst, and uh, they sent me to the stores. They did when I worked there anyway. They send everybody from corporate had to work in the stores. Um, and I was working with the store HR managers. There was two of them, and I was in the data analyst, so I was doing the turnover reports, and I was like, I don't understand. Why are these people quitting after just a few days? What? And I happen to know because this was my literal job was to ensure that we paid more than all of the competitors. Like the big goal that Wegmans had when I was there was to not be unionized, and their strategy for that was to pay more than the unionized grocery stores paid, which I think is a fantastic way to do it. So I knew for a fact, because that was my whole job, um, was not my whole job, but a good part of my job was to ensure that we were paying more than anybody else in the region. So I'm like, these people, why would you why would you quit? Why would you come and work for a week and then not show up? This makes no sense to me. I know they couldn't get a better job.
Mm.
And the store HR manager said to me, some of these people have never worked before, and their mothers have never worked before, and they just literally don't know what it's like to have to go to work every day. And that was just like this huge mind shift for me, that people were coming to work with backgrounds so different from mine. And all of my assumptions just flew out the window. And I had to realize that as an HR professional, I needed to meet people where they were at, um, and provide support that they needed and not support that I would need, because I was coming at it from a different place, than they were. And I've tried to kind of think of that throughout my whole career is, okay, well, but where is the other person coming from? And that's something I think has made me really successful, in my current business as, evil HR lady and improve your HR, is that I am constantly looking at, well, what is somebody else saying? What are the problems that other people are facing? And then how can we fix those instead of, this is how I would like it to be.
Interesting. So it sounds like what you're saying is putting aside or recognizing that your perspective is one perspective, and so to really relate and effectively show up as a professional, that you have to almost test your own assumptions at all times.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is really a valuable thing in so many aspects of HR. Take an investigation, right? Someone comes to you and says, "This is what happened," and our sympathies, our personal experiences, or whatever go, "Oh yeah, 100% believe you," or "No, that didn't happen." And we can't do either one of those. We have to go, "Thank you so much for letting me know," and then look into it regardless. And as soon as we get into that, oh, well, that couldn't be the case because that's never happened to me, or that's absolutely the case because that has happened to me, we can't do either. We always have to stop, take that breath, and then look into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So keeping our mind open at all times while making really important decisions and having an impact, which is something I want to come back to in a little bit. But so it's interesting that that's something that has grown more strongly for you over time. Can you think about, as you reflect, what's conversely, like, as you look back, you know what? I really thought that that was going to be like my workplace truth, but over time you've realized it doesn't apply.
So this might seem really silly and pedantic, but we've discussed that I'm an old person from the 1900s. But one of the things that you youngsters may not know about is that when I was in school, we had a DARE program, which I don't remember what it stands for. Drugs are really bad, or something. I don't know what it stands for. Anyway, it was
I'm sure that's the
anti.
exact acronym, yes.
What is it?
Oh, I don't remember either, but
You don't remember, but did you have
there.
it?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the police officer would come, and everybody, yeah, see, we're in the comments. We had dare, yes. Woohoo. And it was the era of just say no, and all of this stuff. And I was so pro drug testing. Like, if you have ever done anything, I don't want to work with you. Like, back, how did you fail your dare, right? Drug abuse resistance education, says Ricky. But
I'm
it was drugs
impressed.
are really bad. There we go. I'm gonna believe Ricky that that's what it was. Anyhow, this is my background, and I started work at a grocery store, and I started HR in retail, and there are very strong reasons why you don't want people to be drunk or high at work. Absolutely. And you should not be drunk or high at work. That is not what I'm advocating for. Um, and then I was in HR for ten years, and my husband got a job offer in Switzerland. And it was with a new company. And so we had to do all the background tests. And I was like, well, when are you going for your drug test? He's like, they didn't schedule one for me. And I was like, oh, well, you better tell them that they missed it because, um, you don't want to fly your whole family to Switzerland and then have them go, oh, you can't start work because we need to do the drug test. And so he reached out to the recruiter and was like, hey, when's my drug test? And she's like, when's your what?
And you're
And
like,
he says, when's my drug test? Don't I need a drug test? And she was like, why would we test you for drugs? And he was like, oh, it's standard here. My wife is in HR. She said it, was standard. And that she's like, no, we don't do that. And I'm sure she thought he was wackadoodle for asking. And it blew my mind. And I was like, how can that be? And I think that goes back to my original thing of meeting people where they are. And so then I was like, oh, is this something that we really need? And absolutely, if you are operating a forklift, dang it, I want to make sure that you don't have a drug problem. But but I was like, wait a minute, what people do on the weekend really doesn't matter.
right. Yeah, that moment of like, oh, let me test my belief here. Let me really reevaluate. Is this thing that we thought was really important is? And then lo and behold, we come to realize there's actually a different way. Totally agree. Yeah.
And this is not me advocating for you guys to go do illegal drugs. I am not there
We're
all the way. Just say no. Don't do illegal drugs, folks. It is not. Don't even do the illegal ones, dude. Stay away from marijuana, and really cut down your alcohol consumption. I can preach about that, but that's for health reasons. And if you're high at work, I'll fire your behind. Um,
totally.
but
I do
I
hear
realized,
now.
okay, let's chill.
Yeah. For us, the thing that comes to mind is at Snappy, a lot because of the tutelage of our chief people officer, Hamutal, we've we've really started to think about the traditional construct of how you depart with somebody from the organization. And I had come up through a lot of really traditional HR ranks where you do it a very specific way. You meet them and then they walk to the door. And this is, of course, when we're back in the offices. And, but things have evolved so much. And we've really kind of looked at how do we make this as respectful and graceful as possible. Like we're people, we love working together. And when things don't work out, it doesn't mean that has to shift. And so, we've spent a lot of time figuring out how we make that a really good departure and helping somebody go in a really good way, no matter how they're leaving. And I think it goes back to the same thing you're saying, which is like just taking a moment to really test your assumptions.
It really is so important, and letting people go is so critical, whether you are terminating them or they are terminating themselves, and whether it's for cause or for a layoff. Treating people on the way out the door makes all the difference in the world about how things go. And it's not just because we're nice people, because you and I were nice people, but it impacts the business in so many ways. In so many ways, it does. The people that stay behind see how you treated someone when they left. Um, there's plenty of companies where if you say, "Hey, I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice," they're like, "Gone. You're gone now. Hand over your laptop. Hand over your
Yeah.
badge. Get out of here. You're fired." And there's good reasons to cut someone off from systems and stuff once you know that they're out the door. I can support that. but it's how you do it. If you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for your new job, we will miss you. Because you're going to a competitor, we're going to shut down your access, but we'll pay you for your 2 weeks. That's going to inform what their coworkers do, and then it's going to inform everything. Um, oh, I love this. Someone once told me, for you, this is another day, but for the person that you're terminating, it's a life event. It has really stayed with me. Absolutely. 100% life event.
Very true. Because it is, I mean, it is a big transition for that person. And you're so right that it's not just about how you're treating that person, which in and of itself is important. But as you said, other people are looking to that to see, how do we live our values? How do we, how am I going to be treated? Ooh, so it is such an important thing. And it kind of speaks to one of those interesting parts of HR where it's like, if we do everything really well, our success is almost invisible, right? If the separation goes well and that person doesn't come back and have a lawsuit, or take 5 steps back, there was some performance inconsistencies and we helped navigate it and things actually turned around. Those are the things people don't see. And so it can be hard for others to measure success or even see success for us sometimes, when it looks like nothing happened. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So this is one of the most frustrating things of HR, right? And HR is always in the news these days. The latest was the CEO of Bolt announcing that he fired his HR department because they were causing problems. And then he's like, oh, and then I hired a people operations team. And I'm like, that's the same thing. And were they causing the problems or were they just pointing out the problems? And when you fired them, then you just said, I can ignore these problems now, or I don't think there's a problem. Um, but this is one of the huge things. One of my friends, Kate Bishop, who's an employment attorney and an HR uh, consultant, said HR is like the CIA. When everything goes well, no one knows that they've been there. But when it goes poorly, the whole world knows. And I think that that is so, so accurate. And this is something that a challenge that all HR professionals make, because when we're doing a really good job and there aren't big problems and problems are getting taken care of, small problems are getting taken care of so they don't grow into big problems, the C-suite goes, why do we need HR? We don't have any problems around here.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, I think the type of person that is attracted to an HR role, we're like, oh, we're here to help, right? We like people. We want to make things better. We want people to be happy, and we don't toot our own horn, and we don't demand the training and development budget that we're sitting there fighting for the operations people to get their proper training, and then we pay for our own training out of our own pockets. Like, why do we do that? But we do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And you mentioned something there about like, making quick decisions and, people not always seeing those decisions. And it made me think back to what you were saying earlier about, how we have to really kind of trust ourselves sometimes. And it made me start thinking about the yeah but game. That's why I call it the yeah but game. Where I sometimes find myself, and maybe sometimes too frequently find myself in that place of like, we have this policy on like, here's the policy for hiring family members. Yeah, but or this is how we approach performance reviews and merit. Well, yeah, but, and there's a lot of different creative scenarios that our teams can come up with, which are legitimate scenarios. But they can be complex and just outside the scope of what we typically see. And so we are taxed with, or we're responsible for coming up with quick decisions with clarity and consistency to avoid those big uh-ohs. And especially for HR teams of one, we have to do that in silos sometimes because we're dealing with that sensitive stuff that we can't consult with someone else on. Our managers have us. If they are really in a sticky situation, or our leaders, aren't sure this is a new thing, they can come to us and we can consult with them and they can bounce their ideas off of us. But we often don't have anyone to do that with. So, you know, talk to me about trusting your gut or trusting your decision making, especially when it's in a silo.
Being in a silo is so difficult, and so many HR people are in one. I started my real career, at Wegmans, and we had 30,000 employees. I don't know how many HR people we had then. There was 30,000 employees. There was probably several hundred HR people, 300, I don't know, but there was a lot of us, right? So we had someone to go to. But in a small company, it might be just you, or it might be you and two other people. And that is so tough. And I think one of the critical things for HR professionals is, first of all, we need that training so that when a situation comes up, we've prepped for it. Um, like, your plan for conducting a sexual harassment investigation, even if you haven't had to deal with one. Because in a small business, you may go years and years and years without without having to do any of that kind of stuff. But you need to be prepared for it because you never know when that is going to happen and when someone is going to tell you something. I had a situation where I I provide HR support to a couple of nonprofits in my town. That It's volunteer work. They don't pay me, but I provide. I'm their HR person should they need something, and they don't have any employees, so there's nothing. It's just dealing with volunteers. And I was I was at a play, and one of the volunteers for one of these organization came up to me and she said, "Hey, Suzanne, I have a question." And I was like, "Sure." She's like, "You're religious?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, I'm religious." And she's like, "Yeah, I am too, but I don't know what the line is. Like, is it okay if someone is making dirty jokes and joking about having sex with my mother? Is that my religious upbringing that's telling me that that's inappropriate?" And I was like, "No." And so there I am at a play talking to this. I mean, she was a volunteer, but for all intents and purposes, an employee. I I had to be ready
Right.
for
Oh,
that
yeah,
because they're
exactly.
not necessarily going to make an appointment. This woman could have reached out to me when it happened. She didn't. It was when she saw me, and the way she approached it wasn't, "Hey, this fellow volunteer is a creep." It was, "I think I'm too sensitive as a religious person, and it should be okay for people to make jokes about having sex with my mom, right? Like that should be okay." And it's like, no, it's never okay.
Right.
But there's just
Yeah,
this constant preparation that we need to be in this state all the time.
right. That's exactly right. Just that ability to be present and be available and validate her, and for her to have that level of trust to share that with you and know she could, that you had obviously created that sense of safety before. And it's one of the things I think we find ourselves in frequently, which is not knowing which hat we're going to end up wearing when we are confronted with a situation, or somebody puts a meeting on our calendar and they weren't quite clear about what it was about, so we just have to be prepared, right, to show up and wear a particular hat. um, I think there are so many that we wear, and so you've talked in the past about having a lot of hats in HR, and I'm curious, as you look back, which one did you find you were wearing the most? And was it actually the hat you wanted to be wearing?
So when I started, it was an HR data analyst, and there was my analyst hat, right? I developed the first turnover reports and time to hire reports and all of that stuff. I developed all of those reports, and it was a very analytical role. Um, and now, of course, my career has gone through all sorts of shifts over time. And now my main hat is that trainer that I wanted to be originally, that I train and develop HR people. And there's been all sorts of ups and downs through it. I am not an administrative person. Um, and there's so much of HR that is the paperwork, and that is not my strength. That is my least favorite hat. I don't want to chase somebody down for open enrollment. I do not. I do not want to do that. Um, I don't. I don't want to collect all of your forms and all of that stuff. But that is a hat that a lot of us wear. And right now I am in my hat is very much as I hope it is that I am serving the HR community and helping HR people. And we talked about those HR departments of one. That's what my Facebook group, which if you guys aren't a member of that, it's called Improve Your HR on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, please join it as an HR professional. And my main purpose, and Snappy is the sponsor of that group. So yay, you get to see Snappy there and here, is to provide that support for HR people, for HR people of all stripes, but especially for HR people in small companies where they don't have someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And please, by all means, folks in the chat, share which hat you find yourself wearing the most, and is it the one you want to be wearing? I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, um, something I've realized there are hats that we have to wear, right? There are hats we absolutely have to wear, but also as HR professionals, we are responsible for helping shape the organization
Absolutely.
into wearing the hats that they need the most. And they don't, and that's not always something that's clear. It's in my mind, it's really our responsibility to make that clear and make that known. Yep, all of the hats are important. Party planning, strategist, conflict resolver, therapist, change manager. But which one or which ones need to be the most prevalent based on what the organization needs? Like I find that we have the ability to sculpt that, and that's not how I showed up initially.
Right. Yeah. Right. So for you, what hat do you wear the most, and is that the hat you want it to be?
Yeah. Yes. I love the business partner hat. I really love the combination of being a therapist, because I have that a little bit in my background, but I just really like getting in and solving problems and recognizing what problems the business is having and how I can contribute to them. And that's actually kind of how I describe HR. That's what our job is, like figure out the problems and help unblock people to accomplish the business objectives. And that's the hat I love to wear. And I get to do that a lot. And I think, as I look back on my career, that the HRBP role wasn't a thing when we first started back in the 1900s, right? And it's become such a strong and like necessary part of HR. And I'm so happy to see that evolution. And it's the one area where we really have the voice in saying, not the one area, but it's a strong part of being able to say, like, this is how we impact the business. Speaking of being invisible, this is how we contribute to all of those important objectives that we have as an organization, because everything comes back to people at the end of the day, and that's what our role is. So I wear that hat a lot. I wear it happily. And sometimes people are like, why are you showing up for this meeting? This is about like, you know, whatever. And I'm like, because it's about our business. I love it.
And I love that that is something that we do now, which wasn't. And you're right. When I started, there really wasn't an HR business partner function, and if there was, it was very different than today's. And like I said, I developed the first analytics for this grocery store, and and HR analytics was so new that I, with 6 months of HR experience and degrees in politics, got asked to speak at the New York State SHRM convention because I was the only person that the organizer could find that had done any analytics. I didn't even know what SHRM was, right? And she's like, "Can you come do a presentation at this meeting?" I'm like, "Sure, no problem." And I had no idea that it was a big deal. And I didn't get paid for it. But SHRM doesn't always pay. And I had a full-time job, it wasn't a big deal. But because I literally had no clue, right? That what this organization was. And there I was teaching HR leaders from all over New York how to do turnover, and they'd never done a turnover report before. They hadn't done any analytics. And now your HR intern can darn well do turnover reports and, time to hire and all those standard, and our systems, you push a button and it just gives you the answer, right? This was all done in Excel back in the day. And just seeing that change. So many more HR people are business savvy. And I think that's really important, because if we want to affect change, we've got to be able to speak to the finance person and to the chief operations officer and to the CEO, and they all speak numbers. And we have to be able to speak numbers. If we
Yeah,
can't speak numbers, they don't listen to us.
yeah. Could you imagine HR with no analytics today? It's unheard of, but you're right.
It's,
There was a point
it's
in time.
unheard of, but it's not an old field. Like, it's 27 years old. I mean, it's a little bit older than that, but it's a recent thing.
Yeah, yeah. And we've reminisced a little bit and we've talked about our day to day, and you're bringing us into current state and the future of HR. And I don't know if you've heard of this thing called AI,
What
but
is that?
uh, and so
Just teach everybody. I
obviously
know what it is.
technology, AI, it is really reshaping our roles. And I'll tell you a little secret. I never loved writing job descriptions anyway. So I
Right.
am very happy about some of the tasks that AI can do for me now that I don't have to. But there are parts of HR that I think are becoming more important rather than less important as technology evolves and AI comes in. Tell me your thoughts on that.
So I have a love-hate relationship with AI. I use it all the time. I'm a big fan of Claude and a medium-sized fan of ChatGPT. Um, and but sometimes, and I don't know what triggers it, sometimes when I go to open up my email, I have a Gmail account, there'll be an AI summary at the top. And I'm like, stop that. I didn't ask you for that. Or like when you post on LinkedIn, they're like, it always gives you that option. Would you like to, make it better with AI? I'm like, no, go away, right? But I have been watching these companies loudly proclaim, the CEO of one of the AI companies, and now I don't want to say which one because I'm not 100% sure, but he's CEO of one of the HR companies. No, one of the HR companies, one of the AI companies. I want to say it's Anthropic. Anyway, don't quote me on that. He gave this big thing a year ago. It was July of 2025, so 11 months ago. And he said, within a year, we won't need any recruiters because AI will do it all. And so I remembered that lived, rent free in my head. And I was giving a speech at a conference a couple of weeks ago, and that it was on AI keeping the human in HR. And so I was like, I wonder what happened with his company. And so I went to LinkedIn, went to their company webpage and said, list the employees, and then looked at their employee list. There were over 80 recruiters at this company. So he was like, in 6 months, no one's going to need recruiters. We don't need recruiters anymore because AI can do it all. And then 11 months later, he still has 80 recruiters working for him. Because I'm sure what happened is that he had this idea, and he said this in the interview. He's like, so what AI can do is you give it a job description and then it'll go scrape LinkedIn and put together a spreadsheet of all the people that have the qualifications, and then we'll have a bot send out an email to those people to schedule interviews. Because that's how recruiting works, right? You just send a bot email to someone being like, here's your interview, show up at this time. But I believe when he said that, he believed that's what recruiters did, that it was just like that simple. Why am I paying you when I can just have a bot scrape LinkedIn? And
Right.
send
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was such a lesson to me in that this idea of AI is going to do things. I think, and this is my prediction. You can write it down and then come back at me if I'm wrong. I think companies are going to be valuing humans more on a lot of things, especially on the HR side of things, especially on the talent acquisition, especially with everybody using AI to write their resume. And so you're getting hundreds of resumes that are practically identical for the roles. What's going to become valuable is a recruiter, a headhunter who knows these people and knows their real skills and can come into the business and say, okay, you are looking for a new plant manager. I can find you someone with that. And they're going to be going around these automated hiring things because everybody is just AI slop.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And we're going to turn to questions in a moment. So if you haven't already sent your question in and have one for us, please do it now. We're going to turn to those in just another moment or so. But as we wrap up our conversation, Suzanne, can you tell me if you were leading an HR team today and someone asked you, how do I thrive in HR right now? What advice would you give them?
First of all, um, I would say you need to have a team that you can trust. And so building that is really, really important. And if you are leading HR or if you're leading the HR function in a department of one, you need to find your tribe outside of the company so that you can have someone to lean on. And if you're building that or whatever, I think having integrity is the most important thing these days for an HR person. It's always been an important thing. But integrity is telling the truth always, even when it is uncomfortable to do so, which is not being like, I just wanted to let you know you're fat. So that's not integrity, right? But it is integrity to stand up and be like, no, this is not going to work. And here is why, even if it's uncomfortable for yourself. And if you have that good support community and people that will back you up, I really think that that is a helpful thing. And I also think being able to listen and going back to, the first of our discussion and talking about listening to what people actually need rather than bringing our preset notions into that because we haven't been where they've been. So we want to make sure that we are listening. And if we can do those things and be someone that the CEO, that the CFO knows is going to give it to them straight
Yeah,
and that we're looking out for the people, hopefully that will give us the respect and credibility that we need to actually do the job. And being able to do the job that we're meant to do is what reduces that stress. The stress happens when we can see all of these things that need to be fixed and there are blocks to getting it to do. It's it's not actually as stressful to have a lot of work if you can actually do it. If you can just do it, then it's fine. There's a lot, but we can do it. It's when we have a lot of things that need to get done, but we can't do it. We can't fix the problem that becomes really stressful.
absolutely. And going back to what you were saying about, finding your support, that's why there are folks like you out there who are giving us advice and helping us know we're not alone. So I'm going to turn to the questions now. And this isn't the most recent one, but I'll say it jumped out at me in the chat when it came through. And it's I think very on point with what we've been talking about, which is what's the most important task or tasks that an HR person handles? This person is new at the company and there's been no HR department. So they're creating this on their own, which can be exciting, but
Yeah.
also super daunting. And um, Andrea's not wanting to miss anything important. So what advice can we give Andrea?
Oh my goodness. First of all, congratulations. That is a huge role, and super exciting. And I think the answer is going to be different for every company. There are some basic compliance things. Like the first thing I would do if I was starting an HR function is do an I-9 audit. I know that that's just so thrilling, but if they've been handling their hiring internally, and I mean, maybe they've had someone that come in and did it, but I that would be like, week one, let's make sure that the government isn't going to show up on my doorstep and I'm not going to have this ready. Like I would start with that kind of compliance um, thing, but then I really think it's critical to ask the CEO, the company president, you're the first HR person. What were you hoping to accomplish by having me here? Because the answer to that is going to be so different. Because you may have someone say, gosh, I really need someone as a strategic partner. Um, I'm having trouble with, turnover. I'm having trouble with this. I'm planning to retire in 10 years and I want to have someone built up to do this. They may say that, or they may just be like, I am so sick of this paperwork. I needed someone, and they expect you to be an administrative assistant. Uh, Either way, you need to know. And so that's what I would say. First thing is check that compliance, like the I-9 audit, and secondly, to have that conversation, and then to have that conversation with the whole leadership team, and presumably this is a small business, and to have that conversation with everybody. Like, what do you expect from HR? Because people come from it with different backgrounds, and they've seen those headlines of, Bolt fired all of HR, and my goal, there was some other woman that went viral for saying my goal is to have the first HR free company. And I was like, yeah, you go, girl. You have no idea what you're talking about. And so people come with these attitudes. So it would be one of those talking with everybody. And in a small business, you could literally talk with everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Get the fundamentals set so that they're kind of on autopilot and you don't have to worry about the compliance pieces. Like you said, you don't want the auditor coming to the door or forgetting your EEO1 report if that's still a thing, but get those taken care of. But then, like you said, really kind of figure out what the blockers are and what they brought you in, which is so exciting. So they see the value, but unlocking what it is they had in mind and then starting to make it your own as well, because you're going to start to pick up things, you're going to trust yourself, and you're going to really see where you can make an impact.
Absolutely. And you're going to want to fix things faster than you can,
So
because you're going to take a look at their compensation structure, which I guarantee is going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible. A business that has had no HR has been paying based on vibes. And so it's going to be awful, and there's going to be serious problems, and you as an HR professional are going to go, okay, the first thing we need to do is do a comp analysis on everybody, and then go to the CEO and say, hey, you need to give this person a raise, and this person a raise, and this person a raise, and this person is making way too much money, so we need to make sure. And the CEO is not ready for that conversation, not ready at all. Because they need to first trust you, and you need to build that relationship first before you start telling him to say, hey, we need to fix the I-9s. That's not going to be a traumatic conversation, right? Because that's something that you can do on your own. You can tell the employee, hey, listen, I need you to bring in your I-9 documents because we didn't record them or whatever the deal is. That's fine. But if when you say, hey, we need to give Jane a $10,000 raise, you need to have built credibility before you say that. And that's going to
Absolutely.
be a little bit of a challenge.
Such good advice. Build credibility and trust. And we're here for you, Andrea, if you need anything. Good luck.
We are, and this is the type of thing that self promotion that my Facebook group is here for. Like you can ask those questions, and people will give you ideas, and it's a really awesome group of people.
I love it. Okay, I'm going to throw another one at you. How do you see OD playing a part in general HR teams? This person's biased because they're an IO psychologist. Me too. So thank you in advance. They'd like to hear your perspective on this.
That's a good question that I don't have a great answer for. I think that understanding how an organization functions and like the psychology of the place is really important. But I don't have a really great answer. I don't know. Courtney, you're an IO psychologist yourself. So what's your answer?
Oh, I need her to turn this back on me. Yeah, I think it really depends on the needs of the organization. I hate to give such a blanketed response, but um like if that's not what if organizational development isn't really the thing that's like the burning pressing issue that's blocking business objectives, then maybe that's not the thing we need to focus on. When you're talking about a general HR team, I'm trying to read between the lines here and think this is probably a team who's, again, trying to do many things at once. And so, what part of HR shows up really needs to be connected to what the business needs. So, maybe not the best answer, but that's what I found over time is despite what I want to be doing, I need to put them on the back burner sometimes because that's not what the business needs.
And I think that thing right there, despite what you might want to be doing, it's putting the business needs first, is HR in a nutshell. Because there are so many things that I would love to do as an HR professional. I'd love to just jump in and fix things. I just want to fix the problems. And sometimes we need to hold back and do what the organization is ready for and what the leadership will accept. And there are limitations on what we can do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think instead we find ourselves in a place where, there are so many projects we want to tackle. There are so many improvements we want to make. And we have to really figure out and align with like, what's the thing that's going to um, bring the most value instead of what's the thing that, for me, the things I'm really passionate about may not always line up with that. So hopefully we gave you some input there,
I
some
feel like
guidance.
that was a bad answer from both of us, but
Yeah.
yay, we love you.
It's a good question. This is where the chat can come back into play. Maybe there are some other folks who have some input. Um, how do you effectively, that's probably gonna be our last question before we wrap up, but how do you effectively change a disengaged workforce?
I think the most important thing is understanding why they're disengaged. And this is probably good to have this be the last question because this is the answer that's going to get me burned at the stake.
Oh,
Um,
like wait for it. All right.
and the data backs me up on this though. If you have a remote workforce, remote employees are less likely to be engaged. And it makes perfect sense in that we are engaged and bonded with those that we see all the time. And if you're working remotely, and HR is kind of a special case because we tend to go see everybody, but if you're a data analyst working remotely, you may just see your data and your boss, and you don't have any need to communicate with another the other data analyst that is looking at the other side of the business, right? You're in charge of the, you're doing data for this and they're doing data for that. And you don't really need to communicate and you don't have this bond with your teammates. And so as HR professionals, if we're seeing, and this is just one of the examples of disengagement, there's a million reasons to be disengaged. If everybody's siloed, they don't see how things go. They don't see the impact. No one passes them in the hall and says, "Hey, great job." They would if they saw you, but they don't. People don't necessarily, look you up in Microsoft Teams to send you a great job message. But if they saw you, they'd say it. And so we have in that environment, that can really be disengagement, and HR can help fix that, but it's hard and it requires managers to manage more closely and to make active reasons for people to come together and actively try to help people understand what's going on different sides of the business, because otherwise they don't, because they're siloed. Other causes of disengagement can be even, you can certainly be disengaged in 100% on-site workforce as well. And you can have disengagement when you're 100% on-site workforce when people believe that their jobs don't need to be 100%. So I'm disengaged because my manager doesn't care about me. The company doesn't care about me. We have our mission, vision, values all over the conference room, walls, but nobody actually cares about my needs. And so I think it's really critical to take a look at why people are disengaged at your company. But here's the scary part about this, is that do we have the authority to fix the problems when we find it? Because one of the worst things you can do for employee engagement is to do an employee engagement survey and then not act on it.
Thing about it. Yeah.
It's so much better to not do an employee engagement survey than to do one and not tell anybody the results and not make any changes.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Um, I unfortunately am seeing that we are running low on time, and I feel like we just struck some new things that we could probably talk more about all day. But we do have to wrap up. And I want to say thank you so much, Suzanne, for joining us today. It has been a pleasure talking with you. Like I said, so many topics we've opened up. I feel like we could do another one of these and spend another hour just talking on workplace disconnectedness, loneliness, and remote staff. But thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been so fun, and I love everybody that's attended, and we had so many questions that we didn't get to. Um, and I'm hoping that I can get you guys to send me the questions that we had in the chat, and then let's tackle them in the Facebook group.
Love it. We will absolutely do that. Sounds like a plan. Thank you all for joining today. We really appreciate it.